All right, in this one, we're going to be kind of practicing static, which we just learned in the last video. Going to be a lot of coding. As always, I invite you to code along with me. Pause if you need to, rewind if you need to, speed me up if I'm going too slow. But what I don't want you to do is just watch the video and think you got everything figured out. Don't just look at the source code. I want you to code along with me. That's how you build up kind of coding muscle memory, if you will. So with this, we're going to be coding StringHelper, right? The string class can sometimes feel incomplete. We're going to write a utility class. We just learned what a utility class was. That is a class that consists of nothing but static methods. This class is going to be called StringHelper, and it defines several static methods that can help manipulate string objects. Okay, here is a public interface. We're going to be overloading a delete method. We have an insert method, and we're going to have reverse. Note that all of these are underlined. The underline indicates that they are static. Okay, so let's get started. And the first method we're going to write is delete. It's going to take in a string and then two ints, which represents indices. Define a static method delete that deletes a section of the specified string beginning at the first specified index, inclusive, to the second specified index, exclusive. Okay, note that the string has to come in as an explicit parameter. The reason why it's not an implicit parameter is because this is a static method, and that's part of the design here. I'm basically going to repeat myself in just a moment, but strings are immutable. What that means is that none of the string methods modify the implicit parameter. Right? When you do substring on a string, it doesn't modify that string. We end up having to save the result back into the string itself, into the variable, in order to simulate that change. I think what I just said is going to make more sense in code. So let's actually hop into it. I'm in IntelliJ. I'm going to make a new project by going to File, New Project. Our JDK is already selected, so we'll go Next. We'll go Next. I need to switch folders real fast. You're likely already in the correct spot, so you can go ahead and title your project StringHelper. I'm going to ensure that the subfolder gets created. I'm going to expand my project folder, right click on the SRC and make a new Java class called StringHelper. Okay. Whenever we are creating a new class, one of the first things I'm going to ask you is what type of properties, what type of instance variables do you want to represent? The answer here is none. None is what I'm looking for. Why? Well, this is going to be a utility class. A utility class is not really designed to model objects. This is throwing OOP out the window. Right? We're not worried about objects here. Right? There's no instance variables, no properties I want to represent. Now, help me with the constructor. And I'm pausing, I'm doing nothing because there shouldn't be a constructor. This is going to be a utility class, right? So we'll never actually make a StringHelper object. And that should make some sense. The reason being, if there's no instance variables, well, what's the point of the constructor? The point of the constructor is to initialize the state of the object by initializing the instance variables. Let's say that again. The point of the constructor is to set the initial state of the object by initializing the instance variables. If I don't have any instance variables, then there's no reason to have a constructor, and I'm never even going to make a StringHelper object. So I'm actually ready for the method. Let's jump back to our signature. Right? I would consider pausing here and trying to plug in a signature. We're going to be in the StringHelper class. The name of this method is delete. We're going to take in these three parameters. We're going to return a string. Okay, so I'm going to go public. It's underlined, indicating that it is static. The return type here is going to be string. Right? That's our return type. The name of the method is delete, and we're going to take in three parameters, a string, which I'm going to call str, an int, which is our starting index. I'm going to call it bag, short for beginning, and lastly, an int that is end. Okay. Okay. Let's Java doc this. Big brain. Deletes a section of the specified string at the first specified index. That's going to be bag to the second specified index. That's going to be end. Okay, I'm going to kind of add some lines here to make this a little bit pretty, more in our field of view, highly readable. Deletes a section of the specified string. That's this guy. Beginning at the first specified index, that's this guy, to the second specified index. That is this guy. So str, this is the string to delete from. Bag is inclusive. End is exclusive. Something like this. Okay. Here's a good spot to kind of pause again if you would like to try to do the delete method on your own, but I'm actually going to kind of knock it out. Okay, when it comes to strings, we can't really delete. That's the whole reason I'm actually even writing this method. What you end up doing is like keeping a section. Let's maybe kind of throw an example in here. All right, let's just say I want to delete the L and the O. Okay, well, what I'm actually going to do is basically keep that section and then keep that section and end up piecing them together. Right? So in order to do this, what a call would look like to this method is something like delete. There's our string. This index would be what? 0, 1, 2, index 3. And this index here would be, I guess we would go to this index, right? So if this is 3, this is 4, this is index 5. Okay, so I will delete from hello world 3, 5. The length of this is 2, meaning I'm actually getting rid of, or I should say the difference between these two parameters is 2. So I'm getting rid of these two characters, beginning at this index up to this index. Okay, so what I want to do is effectively keep this section. Right, so why don't we create a string? And I'm going to call it first. It's the first half of our string, the first section. And we're going to begin at index 0 up to index 3, effectively. But I'm using like hard values here as an example. We need to basically be referring to these variables. So in order to keep that section, I'm going to make a substring of str beginning at index 0 up to this index, which is going to be bag. Okay, so that is going to be HEL in my example. I'm going to make another string, which is going to be basically from here on. From here on. That's also a substring of str. And that's going to start at this index and go through the rest of our string. Now, I could use this version of substring where we do str.length, but IntelliJ grays this out because it's kind of redundant. It doesn't really do anything. Substring is overloaded, right? So I'm going to use the overloaded version that starts at this index, which would be my comma, and then goes through the rest of the string. So this is my first section, which is HEL. This is my second section, which is comma space world. I want to basically piece those together, and I can do so at the point of return. Okay, let's test this out, and we'll come back and talk about this method and possible changes. I'm going to do it in a driver. I'm going to right-click on my SRC, do a new Java class called driver. I'm going to plug in a main method with PSVM, and I want to call this delete method. Okay. It is in another class, StringHelper, and it is static. As such, I'm not going to create a StringHelper object, right? If I came in here and said StringHelper blah, 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 is equal to a new StringHelper, there's no reason to do that. I don't have to. Instead, the way I'm going to end up calling the method is referring to the class that's defined in StringHelper.delete. And I'm going to pass in hello world 3, 5. Right? I want to delete this section. Okay, this method returns a string. So I have a string sitting right here. I can just directly print that, and we can see what we get here. I'm going to right click in free space, tell my program to run. And you see that we got rid of the L and the O, the two characters that I wanted to get rid of. So this works. Okay, let's talk about a few things. So earlier I said that none of the string methods modify the implicit parameter, right? This substring method does nothing to str. str is still the same. I can kind of prove this by printing off str here. I'm going to run my program again. Note that the delete method is going to get called. In theory, substring would make changes. There's str right there. Maybe I should annotate this so it becomes a little bit more clear that that is str. But notice that it went through two substrings and it did not change. This is what we mean by saying that string is immutable. None of the string methods modify the implicit parameter by design. Instead, what they do is they create new strings. Okay, so I am basically taking the string that's returned here, the new string, and saving it to this. And so I end up making these variables, and some of you have already are way ahead of me, I'm sure. All I did is add them together here at the point of return. Well, we could just do that at the point of return. There's no point in having the variables. Here is a working delete method, and I'll run it again, and you'll see that we get the same result. Sweet. Let's look at the next one. Okay, it says define a static method delete that deletes all the characters from the specified string beginning at the specified index through the rest of the string. We're overloading it, and this is a lot like substring, right? Where I can take just one parameter, start at that index, and go through the rest of the string. This method, it's called delete. It's in the StringHelper class. It takes in two explicit parameters, a string and an int, and it returns a string. It is static, I can tell because it's underlined, which means it has no implicit parameters. Okay, so we're going to go public static string delete. We'll take in a single string, and then we'll take in a single index. Okay. Java doc, yeah, sure. Deletes a section of the specified string beginning at the specified index through the rest of the string. And I'm going to get rid of this @param annotation. Okay. Before you start recoding this, I want you to think smarter, not harder. I already have a method delete that does a pretty good job of deleting stuff. Why rewrite it? What I'm going to do is just call this delete from this delete. What do I mean? We're going to return delete, passing in the string, which is str, and then the beginning index. Okay, what is effectively my end index? Let's take our hello world example. Right? If I try to delete from hello world, beginning at index 3, here's an example call for this delete method. Index 3, we've talked about as this one. I effectively want to start there and then delete everything else. So what is my end index? Well, that would be basically here, just right at the end of the string. Keep in mind it's exclusive, right? If I was going to mimic this using this delete, I would use the exact same opening parameter, and the ending parameter is just simply the length of the string. Okay. Couple of things here. This is italicized. That's IntelliJ, telling you that it's a static method. Note that I'm calling a StringHelper method, but I'm calling it from the class that I'm in. That's why I did not have to say StringHelper.delete. Now, you can. You could do that, and it works perfectly fine. But because we're in the StringHelper class, you do not have to. So this delete method is just going to call my other delete method. I'm going to pass along the exact same string. I'm going to pass along my beginning index, and we're going to use length as the ending parameter. Let's first see that this works. I'm going to copy and paste this, except I'm going to get rid of the 5, which means the end result should basically just be HEL. Right? Whereas the end result of this is, whatever we have down here. I'm going to right click and free space, and we're going to see that our delete method should work. Well, of course it works. It's using an existing delete method that I know works. Okay. So the flow of this is whenever I hit this delete, right, we're going to come in here. We're going to come in here, and our string is hello world, and beg is 3. Well, what it does is it calls this delete up here, passing hello world 3 in the length of the string, which is some spot out here, 12, I believe. So we come up here, and then that one actually does all the work. It gets returned, so that comes back here, which then gets returned, which we end up printing back in our driver. So that's what the flow of that looks like. What I want you to kind of notice is that we're working smarter, not harder. And as it turns out, substring is programmed that exact same way. What do I mean? When they created substring, they wrote this version of substring. And all this one does is call it. This is a pretty good approach, particularly because it's beneficial to editing later on. Right? If I change the way that the delete works for some reason, maybe I want this index to be inclusive, and I want my other deletes to kind of go along with that, I only have to change this one method, and it effectively updates this one. Okay, so this is a process I call chaining. I don't know if that is the correct word for it, but I have chained this delete method to this other one, so any changes that I make to this delete effectively changes all the deletes that are chained to it. So that's a pretty good design approach. And as I said, they use it in the string class. That is how substring is coded, right? This is technically 2 different substring methods. They wrote this one that takes in 2 parameters, and all this one does is call it. It's chained to it. Let's look at our next StringHelper method. By the way, if you were to code it, it would just be this. Or we can go the big brain approach. Look at past me, looking out for future me. All right, this next one's called insert. Define a static method, insert, that inserts the second specified string into the first one at this index. Okay, first let's translate this into a method header. We got public static. Our return type is string. The name of the method is insert. We take in 2 strings. Hardest part about being a programmer is naming these things. How about string 1 and string 2? And then we're going to take in an integer index where we want to insert. Okay. String 1 is the string to insert into. String str2 is the string to be inserted. I is the index where str2 should be inserted into str1. All right, and like my other ones, I'm going to copy this real fast. Inserts the second specified string into the first one at the specified index. Beautiful. Inserts the second specified string. You could use like some parentheses to clarify, right? str2 into the first specified string, str1, at the specified index, I. This is starting to get too long. This is really the line that IntelliJ suggests. I think that's a bit much. I like to keep it a little bit more in my field of view. All right. Wow. Okay. So let's maybe get an example going. We would call insert, passing in hello world. I miss the proper hello world. So that's the string I want to insert into. And let's say that I want to insert the word cruel right here. All right, that's going to be index 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And that should basically give me hello cruel world. Let's add a space to this. This is the idea. Okay, so let's think about this. Again, I can't really delete from strings. What I can do is keep sections of strings. I want to keep everything from the string up to our index. Right, so I want to keep everything from index 0 up to index 7. Sounds like substring to me. I then want to basically tack on my string that I want to insert at that position. I then want to come back and basically tack on my second half. We could use variables to break this up. Right, so I'm going to basically have my first half of str1. It's everything from index 0 up to this index. So we'll take a substring of str1 beginning from index 0 up to index I. That's going to give me hello, comma, space. Let's get our second half, which is everything from that index, I, on. Well, that's going to be str1, same string, from index I on. Again, I can't really like insert per se. It's the reason why we're writing this method. What I can do is break apart the string by like keeping sections of it. So that is my first half. That is my second half. Why don't we leave these as comments? All right, this is going to be hello, comma, space. And this is going to be world, based on my example. At the point of return, I'm going to take that first section, which is hello, comma, space. I'm going to tack on my string, str2, which should be cruel, with a space, plus my second part. Let's test it out, and then we'll clean it up. I'm back in my driver. Okay, I'm going to show you kind of an alternate way. Like I'm printing whatever's returned from the method, but you could save it. Right? We could create a string that's whatever is returned by the method. I want to call the method insert. It is static and it is in another class. So I'm going to say StringHelper dot insert. I'm going to use the example that I used here. I'm going to use the example that I used here. So we're going to say insert into hello world, the word cruel with a space, at index 7. Right, this is going to return something, which I'm then saving into a variable. Let's see what's in that variable. Right, and if these are messy and you want to get them out of the way, we can just comment those out. And our original string was hello world, and we inserted cruel inside of it. Right, if I change this index, it's basically going to move the cruel to some other spot. Sweet. Okay, as with some of our earlier methods, like I create these variables, but they're very temporary. You could just do this all at the point of return. So there's our final method. I'm going to run it again just to make sure it works. Make sure we're getting the same result. Switched it back to 7 so we get our original example, and voila. One more method, let's go. Reverse. Reverse is going to reverse the order of the characters found in the specified string. Okay. I feel like we've done this before. We've done it with arrays or something. So here I am in StringHelper. I'm going to translate this signature into a header. We got public. It's underlined, so I know it's static. It returns a string. The name of the method is reverse, and we have a string that we're taking in. Let's Java dock it. Okay, so this can be a little bit misleading because just like with our string methods, I'm not actually modifying str. What I'm doing is creating a new string. Okay, this one, it's going to use a loop. What I'm going to do is create kind of a temporary string. It's a string that I plan on returning, so RTN may be a good name here, and it's empty initially. I'm going to loop through str in reverse, pull out the character, add it to my return string. So let's get a loop going here. A short key in IntelliJ is for I. Right, that's our standard loop, except this is the beginning. I want to start at the end of str. That last spot is going to be str.length -1. We're going to basically start at a high number and work our way towards 0, and we'll keep going as long as I is greater than or equal to 0, right? So I started at a large number and want to work my way down towards 0. Okay, note that 0 is a valid index, so we do want the equals to. The last index is 1 less than our length. Okay, so I'm going to start at the end. Let's say that we want to maybe reverse hello world. And that's going to give me, oh, this is a bad idea. This is such, just, you know what it gives me. Why am I doing this to myself? That's going to give me that string. Hello world. So I want to start here at this index, and I'm going to add this to my return string. Couple of ways to actually get that character. Substring is what's in the subset. I taught you charat, and I think charat, it's a little bit cleaner, but it's just outside the subset. So basically all these things can be done without using charats, but I'm going to use it here because it's simple enough. I'm going to add to my return string. I want to keep what is there, but I'm going to tack on the current character at position I coming from str. So str charat index I. This is going to pull the current character and tack it onto my return string, and then we'll just we'll make RTN become that. Now, some of you, you know that we could basically use a shorthand assignment operator. We can say RTN plus equals strchar add I, and these are the exact same thing. Okay, so I'm going to build up this return string. After the loop is over, I've gone through all of the characters, so we're going to return RTN. Some of you also know that if we have a loop with only one statement, we can get rid of that. Let's try this out. I'm going to hop over to my driver. One of the main things that we're actually kind of testing here is how to call static methods. Right? We wrote a method in the StringHelper class called reverse, and we want to reverse hello world. This is actually one of those cases where it's almost easier for me to program the reverse method than it is to take the string and like reverse it manually. I'm going to run this bad boy. And there it is. Right? What I'm doing is I'm going through the string backwards, taking the current character, adding it to this RTN string, building it up as we go. Okay, and that's going to be it for us. I'll see you in the next one.